2 weeks ago now, we saw the release on Netflix, the latest SpongeBob spin-off film, Plankton the movie. I'll be honest, I've not kept my finger on the pulse for SpongeBob's franchise. I loved it as a kid, and I'd watch the show itself on TV back in the 2000s. I used to play some of the games back in the day as well. I particularly remember Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. Oh, those were the days, heading down to Blockbuster to rent the game, rent it because my parents were cheapskates who only bought me shit when there was absolutely no other alternative. Good times. Anyway, as I was saying, I've not been keeping up with SpongeBob since the 2000s. 2010s and beyond? No, not a chance. I moved on to other things and I stopped thinking about it. Maybe I felt like I'd aged out of it. I was vaguely aware there had been SpongeBob movies. I definitely saw the one that released back in 2004, but there's apparently been 2 mainline films since that point. A Sponge Out of Water in 2015 and Sponge on the Run in 2021. Then there's going to be another film at the end of this year, The Search for Squarepants. On top of that, there's also been Netflix spin-off films that revolve around side characters that have come out in the last couple of years. Last year, the movie Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, came out to mixed reviews. And of course, this year saw the release of Plankton the movie. For some reason, I thought that after a decade and a half away, the best place to jump into a franchise again would be a spin-off film made for a streaming service based on one of the antagonists. Because, I don't know why. That's just the way my mind works. I'm pretty sure both of these films were leaked at some point, by the way. I do remember something like that. Yep, I just looked it up, and in 2024, we saw both the SpongeBob spin-off movies get leaked online. In January, Sandy Cheeks was uploaded to X, which is a sentence that sounds far dirtier than it is, whilst the Plankton movie appeared on X in about August. Was this a Netflix leak or something? My god, it's insane that 2 SpongeBob movies managed to leak in a single year. Netflix, get up your security, son. That's a bit farcical. But enough of that, back to the movies. Even before I went and looked at what the response had been for this film, I was kind of expecting it to be bad. At this point, I think I've been largely conditioned to think that most spin-off films from side characters are going to be garbage. In my defense, that's usually how it goes though. Famously, Mater starred in Cars 2, and it was every bit as bad as you'd expect. So I wasn't hotly anticipating a movie that I thought would take a funny side character like Plankton and overexpose him to the point that his jokes were tired and the character no longer interesting or engaging to watch. Then I took a look at the reviews because I did want to get some sort of idea as to what I was walking into. The response on Rotten Tomatoes has seemed rather uniform across the board. In terms of its critical score, it has a 75%, and in terms of its audience score, it's sitting on 71%. Neither category has all that many reviews overall, with 12 critics and only 100 plus audience members taking the time to do so. So in the end, I had to dig a little deeper. I went to places like Reddit to see what people were saying. I got the same sort of responses as far as I can see. It looks like people think that the film is good, but not great. It's better than the Sandy Cheeks movie, and is a very watchable film, but it doesn't hit the highs that the franchise is probably capable of. I then ended up sitting down to watch it, and I think I largely agree. It's a good film that never really tries to be great. It's there to give you a laugh for 84 minutes, and that's what it does. I very much respect a film that knows what it is and what it should be doing. Not everything needs to reinvent the wheel, or try to be too deep and meaningful. Sometimes you want a junk food movie, and that's what you're given when you sit down to watch Plankton. Something that you don't need to take all that seriously. Something nostalgic that will take your brain to that fun and familiar place. Something that just makes you want to smile. There's nothing wrong with that. I think I would have been disappointed if the film was clearly trying to take itself too seriously. It would have been kind of embarrassing and sad. Regardless though, what's the film actually about? Plankton the movie follows the story of Plankton and his computer wife, Karen, as they navigate troubled waters in their marriage. For 25 years, Plankton has tried and failed to get his hands on the secret formula for the Krabby Patty, which has made the restaurant of Mr. Krabs, the Krusty Krab, famous all throughout Bikini Bottom. And all the while, he's put his needs, desires, and interest above all else. Arrogantly, he presumes that he's the greatest and the most intelligent member of the pair, and Karen's increasingly sidelined. After his latest pathetic failure, in which he's easily outwitted by Mr. Krabs and tossed out on his ass, Plankton returns home to discover that in his absence, Karen has somehow managed to turn their failed restaurant, the Chum Bucket, into an overnight sensation. Through its success, she believes that they can create franchises to be placed in other towns under the sea, and by doing so, eventually have the means to take over the world. Plankton, being Plankton, decides he's going to ruin everything, and he burns down her hard work and chases off the customers. This doesn't sit so well with Karen, and she removes her empathy chip from the hardware and turns into a large Hydra mech. She then magnetizes the Chum Bucket, drawing in all of Bikini Bottom, to create a fortress with which she'll be able to take over the world in her own way, leaving Plankton in the dust. Enter SpongeBob, who meets up with Plankton, and with the help of a junior therapy kit he sent away for in the mail, he starts to unravel the truth behind the marriage of Karen and Plankton, and how they got to this point in the first place. Plankton reveals that he grew up in a large family of redneck Planktons, who never valued the things that Plankton himself was interested in, and kept him feeling like an outsider in his own family. My god, that was a lot of planktons in one sentence. Thus, he created Karen, who originally was a potato in a petri dish that was hooked up to a calculator, and she became his first ever friend. As they grew older, they developed an interest in taking over the world together, and thus they realized they'd have to go to university and get a degree. They spent many happy years at university, slowly working towards their goal, which was to build a freeze ray which would help them conquer Earth. It takes years and years and years of failed attempts, but eventually, after Plankton transplants Karen's consciousness into a new computer body, they make the freeze ray and go off to conquer the world, only to get instantly obliterated by a little child at the beach, as obviously their freeze ray tank is tiny compared to her. Demoralized, Plankton and Karen go to eat at the Krusty Krab, where they overhear Krabs tell a random guy the Krabby Patty's going to help him take over the world, as in, from a popularity standpoint. Plankton, of course, being an idiot, misinterprets this, and thus he thinks his schemes will all succeed, he just needs that formula. And he spends 25 years trying to get it. So he and SpongeBob make their way to Bikini State University in order to find Karen's original parts. Plankton then betrays SpongeBob and makes a new Karen, sending her off to face down with the old Hydra version, only for him to be betrayed instantly by new Karen, because in the end, they're all Karen. Now the time has come, Karen plans to freeze Plankton and then take over the world. He ends up being rescued by SpongeBob and Karen's gal pals, Sandy, Pearl Krabs, and Mrs. Puff, who put Karen's empathy chip inside Plankton's brain because they feel like he needs to understand how he's treated Karen, to understand how he mistreated her for years and made her miserable. All of a sudden, he's a new Plankton, and he's ready to apologize and reaffirm their love. This leads the group to infiltrate the Citadel, and the gal pals face down with the four faces of Karen and defeat them, while SpongeBob and Plankton continue on after a surprise reunion with Patrick. Plankton eventually goes on to meet Prime Karen, while SpongeBob and Patrick go to the engine room, where they learn the mech is being powered by potatoes, and that the only way to stop it is by having Patrick eat all of the potatoes, which are sliced by SpongeBob and his beloved spatula, Spatty. Whilst that's going on though, Plankton professes his love and adoration for Karen and apologizes to her, revealing that the empathy chip had already burned out and this was all from his heart. She offers him the Krabby Patty formula and he throws it away in favor of simply being with her. Reconciled at last, they go off to conquer the world in her mech, only for it to crumble to dust as they reach the beach because of the sabotage by SpongeBob and Patrick. The mech crumbles, Bikini Bottom's restored, and before the crowd can lynch the two, SpongeBob intervenes and says that he's a sucker for a love story, and thus they should let the two go. Somehow, in Bikini Bottom with the crazy fish, this works, and the movie ends with everybody celebrating. The end. Since we're already here, we may as well start with the storyline, right? I actually found it very well crafted overall. I was pretty impressed how they managed to take what is in essence a decently mature concept, the breakdown and reconciliation of a marriage when one party's no longer feeling emotionally fulfilled, but managed to make it work in a way that everybody could enjoy it. Probably helped the marriage breakdown was between Plankton and a computer that he built himself and then married, and that the reason for the breakdown, beyond not feeling listened to of course, was that he didn't let her help to try take over the world. So they combine a very serious concept with the abject insanity that is the world of SpongeBob and Bikini Bottom, whilst tying it around Plankton, who is in turn one of the more unhinged characters in the franchise, and against the odds, it works very well. They're also pretty liberal with the use of flashbacks in this movie, which usually would derail things, I think. They do go back to that well again and again, but those flashback sequences all worked wonders. They were funny and gave good exposition, unraveling the mystery of Plankton and Karen quite nicely. In fact, I'd argue that they were some of the strongest sequences in the movie overall. What I think I was most impressed with, though, was the character work. Plankton didn't feel overexposed. He didn't feel like he ran out of steam at any point throughout the movie, and that's because they gave him a proper arc and story. He's such a detestable, but of course funny character throughout what has to have been the majority of the movie. When it seems like the shtick is about to wear thin though, and that his unrepentant bullshit is getting very tired, the story changes tack, and he begins to change to get Karen to forgive him. He goes through things, and his character actually meaningfully changes. Quite humorously though, he never actually stops being an unrepentant villain, just a better husband overall. On top of that, Karen's a really great antagonist. She has a legitimate point and gripe. She's also completely batshit insane, and she straight up wins. The plot doesn't force her to make mistakes or to look stupid out of nowhere. Hell, the only reason her robot fails in the end is because of ridiculous SpongeBob and Patrick shenanigans, which you just can't safeguard against. It was great writing. The infusion of different genres into the film with various different scenes and often during the song numbers, I thought that was very interesting. It's crazy how much effort was being put into this thing. They could have gotten away with any old shit and people would still watch it. This showed care though, which was excellent. I liked that SpongeBob remained important in the movie, but not in a way that he was hogging the limelight either. They have him there, he's funny, and they keep the film on course. It's about Plankton, and they don't divert from that. You get all the classic characters in there to some degree, and it works well. They get their moment of shine, but not in a way where it becomes about them. Plus, they don't waste our time with a celebrity guest star or a fresh character taking away the focus. It was the main cast that got the attention, and it worked well for that. Plus, the voice acting was top tier, as always. And so that too really helped to elevate the script and dialogue a whole lot more. Then, from narrative to music. I didn't expect it to be a musical film. My gut response when I heard the songs would be slightly annoyed, probably because I was caught off guard. But after a minute or two, I realized I like the songs. They're making me laugh. They're enjoyable. I wouldn't go so far as to say they were particularly memorable. I certainly don't remember the song titles. I couldn't sing them back for you, and I won't be searching them up on YouTube. But they were fun while they lasted. Then we come to animation. I'm not going to bullshit here. I wasn't a fan. I thought the overall CG animation was not very good. You get used to it as the movie goes on, but it was still noticeably kind of poor. At the same time, though, it's not all bad. Despite the lacking quality of the CG, I do think they got the most out of it they could. The action sequences were usually quite good at least. Visually though, where the film is at its best, is when it goes experimental, using different animation styles and mediums. The most memorable for me being a flashback to Plankton's childhood, using black and white traditional animation, which harkens back to an older era of cartoon. Honestly, this film is just so much better than it had any right to be. I loved it. It wasn't the best, but it made me laugh, and it was worth my time for sure. Even better, it was a subscription movie. Didn't even have to pay for a ticket. Well worth it in that case. So with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the film if you've seen it? Did you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.